Hi, I'm Randy Nesse from Arizona State University Center for Evolution and Medicine. Our guest today is Jim Bull from the University of Texas, Austin, who's done all kinds of very practical and interesting work using deep theory of enormous relevance to medicine. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So I didn't really grasp how you ever got into evolutionary biology in the first place. How far back does that go for you?
I'm not sure I thought about that. Probably 1960s, I started work as an undergrad in someone's lab in Texas Tech University, and I think being a biologist seemed, and there was no molecular biology in those days, so I was always interested in populations, and I think just over the years became more interested in evolution. But I think a lot of it had to do with a mentor of mine at the University of Utah.
Who was that?
Rick Charnoff.
Oh, Rick.
And and actually it was that and George Williams.
Is that right?
So I was in Australia working on turtles with my advisor, who wasn't Charnoff, and we discovered George's book, Adaptation and Natural Selection, and that just hit me out of the blue. I was seduced into evolutionary biology by that book, and then when I came back to Utah, Rick Charnoff was hired as a new faculty member, and he was an evolutionary ecologist, and the synergy between George's book and Charnoff just meant I never looked back.
So I knew we had a lot in common, but I didn't know it went back this far, because for me, reading Williams' 1957 in the late 70s suddenly made me realize that evolutionary ideas had a lot to say about not only aging, but other things in medicine. And then ever since, I continue to develop Rick Charnoff's ideas, applying them to human motivation, and the fact that we go through these cycles essentially every day of applying our energies to one patch and then pulling them back and going them to another patch.
Optimal foraging.
Well, I think his ideas are actually the key to understanding why we have a capacity for mood. But that's another talk for another time.
Anyway, George Williams figures very heavily. I had not met George, but when I got back, so I was in Australia when this epiphany happened. And when I got back to Utah, I was a grad student at the time at Utah. We went to Australia for 18 months. I came back, and my first act was to invite George for a seminar.
Wow, wow. So what was it about adaptation and natural selection that really grabbed you?
The logic. It's sort of this sense of natural selection worked in very specific ways. So the book wasn't mathematical, but you could kind of see logic following mathematical lines there. And it's just, I feel sorry for people that sort of grow up with this where they don't get a chance to discover it like I did, because it really, and it affected another biologist, Rick Shine, who's a very well-known Australian wildlife biologist, and we both read it together, and it just transformed us.
And Paul Schmidt-Hempel, just published an article a month ago in Current Biology about that book and its impact. I'll make sure I'll give you a copy.
Oh, I'd like that.
In a little bit. Right. Let's go on from here. Your first interest was in sex determination.
It was. That started at Texas Tech, where I was an undergrad, and the book came out while I was there by Susumu Ono, Sex Chromosomes and Sex-Linked Genes. And at the time I was very interested in reptiles, so snakes, and Ono's book sort of walked through what he perceived as a progression of sex chromosome evolution from, he saw there's a progression from reptiles to birds to humans, which we don't think of nowadays, but he laid out some ideas about sex chromosome evolution. And since I was working with snakes and they had female heterogamety, I started wondering, well, how did mammals get male heterogamety, snakes get female heterogamety? And that question stayed with me for years, and then I eventually started developing theory for how that could happen.
So I'd like to go into that in just a minute. I want to make sure that you meet Melissa Wilson Sayers, who's here in our group and working on sex chromosome evolution.
Please, yes.